What if events went differently in the final act of Spider-Man No Way Home? What if Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man had failed to save MJ when Green Goblin attacked the three Spider-Men? In today's Marvel's What If, I will be diving deep into this alternate reality where the MCU MJ dies. How could this mega change impact Tom Holland's Peter Parker and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man? Before we dive into this Marvel's What If, do make sure to subscribe if you are new around here, as tons of multiverse fanfic content comes out every week, and there will be a ton more where that came from. I also take requests, so comment down below what videos you would like to see on the channel. With that being said, let's dive right into this Marvel's What If. All three Spider-Men have cured all the villains but one villain, Norman Osborn. After Tom Holland's Peter Parker explained to Doctor Strange that his idea of curing all the villains and then sending them back would work to change their fate, Doctor Strange took the box out of Peter's hand. Still, before he could say any more, all three Spider-Men looked in the distance to see Green Goblin had taken Doctor Strange's box. Norman laughed and blew up almost half of the Statue of Liberty. At the same time, Ned and MJ tried to close down Doctor Strange's portal, but failed. This caused Ned to lose his balance, while MJ fell from the construction site. Tom Holland's Peter Parker jumped in time, trying to catch MJ, but before he could do anything, Green Goblin grabbed Peter in the nick of time, throwing him down below. Peter punched Norman's glider in anger until he blew it up using his pumpkin bombs. They flew towards the broken down Captain America's shield in the water below. At the same time, Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker watched in horror as MJ, the love of this Peter Parker's life, is near death, just like what happened to his Gwen in his own universe. Thinking fast like what he did before, Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker jumped trying to catch MJ. In the original timeline, the Amazing Spider-Man used his agility to catch her, but in our universe, Peter wasn't quick enough to save her. Peter tried to grab MJ, but she was already close to the floor. Peter grabbed her and used his back to stop the fall. Andrew's Peter Parker smiled as he finally saved someone he couldn't, or that's what he had thought. When Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man used his back to impact the fall, MJ's spine had cracked, causing her to die instantly. Andrew's Peter turned her over to see her eyes were rolled back and blood was all over his hands. Peter stood in horror, reliving the actual events of Gwen Stacy's death in his original universe. A loud, distorted noise could be heard. Andrew's Peter Parker's vision had gone. Everything was blurry while Tom Holland's Peter Parker stood down below watching, while Andrew's Peter just holding MJ's lifeless body. Tom Holland's Spider-Man couldn't think as he screamed at Andrew's Peter. Green Goblin used a secret blade hidden in his wrist, stabbing it into Peter's back. Tom Holland's Spider-Man fell to the ground while Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man ran in the distance with Norman's cure. He looked to his left side, watching Andrew's Peter holding a lifeless MJ, while Tom's Peter was bleeding and he was down for the count. Maguire's Peter ran towards Green Goblin, kicking him in the chest while using his webs to pull him back. Maguire's Peter punched Norman in the face again and again until blood was rolling down his hands. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man knew that he needed to stop what he was doing before he was going to kill Norman. As he was about to finish Norman off, Norman kicked Maguire's feet, knocking him to the ground while Norman charged Maguire's Peter, begging him to kill him. Maguire's Peter took Norman's hands and crushed them. Goblin screamed and fell to the ground. He slowly took out a pumpkin bomb from his hands and smiled, saying that he was going to meet Peter in hell, but before Norman set off the pumpkin bomb, his glider went through Green Goblin's chest and Norman's eyes rolled, blood spilling from his mouth. Tom Holland's Peter Parker had thrown the glider into Green Goblin's chest, killing him in front of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Maguire's Peter asked why did he do that, while Tom Holland's Peter told Maguire's Peter he didn't care anymore and screamed for MJ as he tried to walk away. He fell into Peter's arms. Tears came down down Maguire's Peter's eyes. He failed this world's Spider-Man by letting him kill Green Goblin. Tom Holland's Peter attempted to breathe, but it was getting more challenging as each passing moment hit. Everything went quiet from the battle, with MJ's death to Norman's murder, and now Peter Parker of this world was dying. Peter asked Maguire's Peter Parker if he failed as Spider-Man, but before he could answer, he took a big breath and died in his arms. Maguire's Peter was stricken with guilt. He watched the unfolding chaos in front of him. No matter how hard he tried, it seemed like everyone was getting hurt that was close to him or who he tried to help. Peter cried and placed Tom Holland's Peter Parker's body down on the ground. He looked up to see Doctor Strange screaming for help. Maguire's Spider-Man ran to Andrew's Peter Parker. He asked for his help, but he was motionless as if time was frozen. Andrew's Peter Parker had placed down MJ, where Ned broke free from the debris and saw her lifeless body and Peter's. He was shocked that the villains of this world had won and killed his two closest friends of his. He just stood there crying in pain. Maguire's Peter Parker asked what can they do to help, where Doctor Strange said there wasn't much to do since the villains have already leaked into this reality. With an infinite amount of villains coming through, there wasn't much that could be done. The Spider-Man have already caused enough damage in this universe. Strange told them to look around at the destruction. Along with Maguire's Spider-Man, Andrew's Peter could only look in horror as Ned was standing with Peter in MJ's body, and villains were leaking from every corner of the world. Villains such as Doppelganger, Scorpion, Kraven the Hunter, Carnage, Hobgoblin, the list went on. Strange said that they could make everyone forget Peter Parker was Spider-Man. They agreed, but there were too many villains to defeat. Andrew's Peter Parker easily defeated by Kraven, Scorpion, and Carnage, and Hobgoblin threw pumpkin bombs at buildings. Doppelganger and Carnage attacked J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle, and everyone was running everywhere. There was chaos everywhere. Maguire's Peter tried his best to hold off the villains, while Strange protected himself and Maguire's Peter Parker. Doctor Strange saw that the universe had been ripped open, and there was nothing more that could have been done. On the other side of things, Tom Hardy's Venom had been caught up with fighting Spider-Man villains from all of reality, but he was easily killed when Hobgoblin threw pumpkin bombs in his direction, killing the symbiote for good. Doppelganger grabbed Andrew's Peter by the neck near the edge of the construction site. Maguire's Peter screamed and used his webs to fight off Doppelganger, but with one easy stroke, Doppelganger used the Carnage symbiote to claw Maguire's Peter in the chest. While the villains that leaked into the MCU were powerless, Electro and Otto tried to stand with Strange. The Spider-Man were dealing with the rest of the villains, but to no avail. They were also defeated in the chaos. Strange saw that there was only one option that was left. He needed to send back the alternate Spider-Man to their home universes while he fixed his original universe. Maguire's Peter disagreed with Strange's plan, but Strange casted a spell to send back Andrew's Peter Parker and Maguire's to their home universes. While Peter Parker of the MCU had died, the villains were still coming. Maguire's Peter saw Carnage stab Strange in the chest while he screamed no. He was transported back into his home universe. Andrew's Peter faded away, landing back into an alleyway in his home dimension. With Strange impaled with a symbiote tendril, he tried his best to fix reality, but it didn't work. This caused utter destruction to the MCU and would break the multiverse because of it. The villains of each universe who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man would come to lay waste to destroy the universe, while the world had been broken from all the villains coming through and Strange's death. This universe would eventually be destroyed. Maguire's Peter Parker would give up being Spider-Man in his home universe, and Andrew, due to them having too much guilt of being Spider-Man and breaking an entire reality because they couldn't help another Peter Parker. Maguire and Andrew's versions of Spider-Man would question the events and speculate on whether or not the universe had been fixed by Strange. Not knowing these answers, both of them would have a hard time fighting crime. The villains that had originally been sucked into the MCU would die with Strange and that alternate MCU reality. And that is going to be it for this really dark MCU timeline where Strange Strange failed to stop the villains from coming through the portal because Andrew's Peter couldn't save Tom Holland's MJ. I decided to create this dark ending because I wanted to show how one small change could impact a storyline. Having Tom's Peter distracted because of his MJ's death would cause Norman to have the upper hand, stabbing Peter through the back. This most likely would kill Tom Holland's Peter, and I wanted to explore how the villains could rip apart New York fast while using some of the film's Easter eggs. I decided to add in villains like Kraven and Scorpion. I do believe Strange would send everyone back in the nick of time due to them still having their own universes. So for Andrew's Peter and Maguire's Peter not knowing if they saved the whole reality, I think it would bug them to the point of giving up the mantle of Spider-Man. And with Andrew not saving MJ, this would question him being a hero for the rest of his life. And that is all for today. If you guys did enjoy this fan fiction, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on, as I will be doing more Marvel's What Ifs and No Way Home What Ifs. Request down below what you would like to see. But anyways, as always, thanks for tuning in and have a fantastic day.